Greetings from Malaysia, Rob. It's me, Cal, also known as Swag Props. It's a hot sunny day right now, and I'm just out getting some groceries. And to catch that treacherous Furiosa. Anyway, I gotta say congratulations on your 500th episode of Robservations. I wasn't able to catch the whole thing live, but I was able to catch like the last hour or so. But man, you are a beast. Keep on with the good work, and I hope you ride eternal, shiny and chrome. Peace out.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema or sci-fi, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am Robcasting at you. I don't even know if this is going to work, to be honest. The computer is working very slow today. It's hotter in this room than it's ever been, even though I have air conditioning. The air outside feels dead. It just isn't moving. It's humid. It's very hot. It was 110 degrees when I went on. It's hotter in here. We'll see how it goes. I want to thank Cal. I mean, it was great to see Cal. How about that? And as many people know, I'm catching up on videos. I've had videos shifted, and before I play videos, I have to actually process them so I can play them properly through Wirecast. And, you know, I have a lot of new subscribers over the last couple days. And one of the things that, for those of you new subscribers, we do two shows here so far. We do this show and we do Whining About Movies that I do with my girlfriend Elizabeth. And one of the more recent developments, both for this show and for our other show, our sister show, Whining About Movies, is our cornerstone imagination connoisseur, Mr. B.L. Alley, has started to make parody videos that delight both Elizabeth and I to no end. And there was a video for Whining About Movies that I saw today. Actually, I haven't seen it because I waited. And for just to cross-promote, I'm going to play this on tomorrow's Whining About Movies, but because B.L. Alley decided to tackle a favorite movie, I'm going to play his parody. If you haven't seen Whining About Movies, this might not make a whole lot of sense, but if you have seen Whining About Movies, you can see why these videos delight.
I see you got the memo. What memo? The one about wearing the same shirt. There was a memo? That was a joke. Oh. Was it funny? Not really. Are you ready to start the show? Yes, sir. Here we go. Greetings, imaginary can of worms. Once again it is I, your semolina of cinnamon, your vicar of very silly attitudes, and your arched back of Frankenberry, B.L. Alley. And who might you be? And no nicknames. I'm Claude Cole. Welcome to 11 Views, Milking the Movies. What's the show about, Claude? We drink milk and talk about movies. That's right. And tonight's movie is The Big Lebowski, starring Jeff Bridges as the Dude, and directed by the Coen brothers. You asked to choose tonight's milk, so what did you come up with? Why did you pick half and half? Because it's purple? Let me see the ingredients. Well, at least it's real half and half, but I don't think we want to drink this. How come? Because it's half cream. That's a bit heavy for my taste. Oh. We can have some in our coffee later. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's show. But as always, Milking the Movies is brought to you by Ill-Fated Ocelot Men's Anti-Grooming Products. When a man wants to look and feel his worst. Hopefully we're going to have a special guest next time. So what movie should we watch?
What about the one you watched on your computer last night?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Remember? The nice lady was dressed like a cowboy, but she forgot her pants.
It's time to go.
Okay.
So how do we always end the show, Claude?
Abruptly?
I meant, what do you say?
Oh, everyone in heat has a story from hell that you have Yeti ears. All your hats with dew will glisten.
And?
Hold the udders tight.
I guess that's appropriate for this show. Good night.
Well, I want to thank BL for doing these videos. They never cease to make me chuckle. And I will say, this is hell. It's funny, everybody always talks about how in the summer it gets hot. It's supposed to get hot. And every September in Los Angeles, for the 32 years I have lived here, it's always the hottest it ever is. Usually mid-September, but this is pretty brutal, I have to say. But it is hot, but so what? It's the summer. Anyway, I've got a lot of letters. Not a whole lot going on in the world of entertainment. However, of course, Tenet did pull in over $100 million this weekend globally at the box office, which, you know, I don't know if that was so prudent in terms of going to the movies. We will find out, I guess, in 2 weeks. But at least people are going back to the movies. Clearly, there is a hunger for movies, and that's, I think that's good. That's good all the way around. It's nice to see the business come back, because I was beginning to wonder if we would ever go to see the films again in places like movie theaters. And Mission Impossible 7 has begun filming in Norway. They put up a picture of what looks like the best Evel Knievel ramp I ever saw into oblivion. So I can't imagine what's happening there. Is it going to be sort of a GoldenEye-esque leap off of a motorcycle into the infinitude of wherever they are in Norway? It looked pretty great to me. Looking forward to it. I've quite enjoyed both Rogue Nation and Fallout. The Mission Impossible series just keeps getting better. I'm glad they are making apparently 7 and 8 concurrently. And that's good to know. So I'm very excited about that. Now, as many of you know, we have yet to give away, every time I bring this up, this is the 5-disc 4K Studio Canal Region B. It is the European disc of Flash Gordon, which we have yet to give away. And I just want you to know I will be giving this away on tomorrow's show, a special Labor Day gift. And when I come up with a decent trivia question, it'll probably be a Star Trek trivia question, seeing as that, of course, Tuesday is Star Trek Day. The 54th anniversary of the debut of Star Trek, at least on American television. So that's pretty exciting. So there you go. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump in with the letters, and guess what? I have a Willow Yang letter today, people. I have a Willow Yang letter. And we all know how much we love Willow Yang letters. You know, I see my computer straining. I don't know if this is strobing, or I'm assuming it looks okay, but we shall see. The first person that is up today is Victor Rosario from Maine. And this comes, well, Dear Rob, Captain of the Starship USS Imagination. Love for the King. In 1985, I returned to New York City to attend the wedding of my Pratt Institute college pal, Kent Williams, illustrator of Havoc and Wolverine, Blood, and The Fountain with Darren Aronofsky. I actually have The Fountain right back here. Right here, look. Speaking of Kent Williams, well, now I have to get it, you know. Now, this is what you were speaking of. This is, Kent Williams did illustrate this version. It was from the Aronofsky's film. It's beautifully illustrated, but that's pretty cool. That you went to your Pratt Institute college. You went to Pratt Institute with Kent Williams. He's a very talented artist. Kent had a booth at the New York Comic Con the day before his wedding. So I went to see him. And to my surprise, God wanted me to also meet one of my personal heroes. Jack Kirby must have been about 5'4", but to my eyes, he was a giant. Neil Adams and him are the reasons I became an illustrator. That's one of the highlights of my life. He was with his wife, Roz, and the Kirbys couldn't have been nicer to every starstruck fan they met, including me. The ideas and characters of the artist formerly known as Jacob Kurtzberg have been turned into billions of box office dollars. Too bad he did not live long enough to see it happen, enjoy it, or maybe grin and bear it. It took an insufferably long time for Marvel and Disney to make an out-of-court deal with Jack's heirs. Now he's being recognized as the co-creator of the original Marvel Comics universe, and his family is compensated. Nonetheless, everything seems little when it comes to honor the king of comics. Everything except love. After the success of Batman the Animated Series, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm produced Superman the Animated Series in 1996, 2 years after Jack's passing. I'm a Marvel guy, but I like DC too, and I adore the Man of Steel and what he stands for, so it didn't matter if I got drunk on Friday night and I was still hungover. I woke up religiously at 8 o'clock every Saturday morning to watch Kids WB and what would become my favorite animated show of all time. Dan Turpin, a police detective first introduced in New Gods 5, was a part of the cast. He wasn't the bruiser from the comic, but he seemed familiar. He looked like his creator, Jack Kirby. Terrible Turpin was a good, tough guy with anger management issues and an unrequited love for his implied lesbian boss, Maggie Sawyer. His role varied in size from episode to episode, but then he saved Superman from apocalyptic weaponry given to Intergang boss Bruno Mannheim by a sharp-dressed Kanto in Tools of the Trade, the episode that introduced the Fourth World to the series and showed a last-minute glimpse of Darkseid in the same manner Marvel did with Thanos in the Avengers a decade later. Turpin wasn't in Father's Day, the second installment of the Darkseid story arc, but he was huge in Apocalypse Now Part 1 and 2, the most dramatic hour in the history of Saturday morning children's television. Part 1 begins with Superman bleeding through the nose and ears, and Part 2 ends with a rabbi singing Hatzi Kaddish at a funeral. Among the mourners were Tony Stark, Nick Fury, Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Stan Lee. They were later removed for obvious reasons. Kirby was Jewish. When the screen faded to black and in memoriam of white letters appeared, the episode is dedicated to the memory of Jack Kirby, Long Live the King. I was cheering and in tears. This is the most touching tribute to Jack Kirby ever, and to this day, I still get choked up whenever I see it. When I originally submitted this letter, or maybe I forgot to do so, it was on Friday, August 28th, in order to honor Jack's 103rd birthday and a day before the 500th show. I only missed the first hour. Little did I know that it would also mark the passing of Chadwick Boseman, a man who played with honor and dignity one of Jack's greatest co-creations. I still can't believe he's gone. Victor Rosario from Bieman PR, USA. P.S. Mother is the name of God on the lips and hearts of little children. I can't close my fifth letter to you without agreeing more with your sentiments regarding The Crow. Alex Proyas's adaptation of James O'Barr's graphic novel was a miracle. All the pain and poetry right there. Claudia loved the movie too, but had never read the book. She read my beat-up copy a few months ago and loved it as well. The cast was great, but Michael Wincott, Rochelle Davis, Ernie Hudson, and even John Polito were unforgettable. Talking about unforgettable, Brandon Lee had everything to become a superstar, and his untimely passing still hurts today. To Brandon and Chadwick, born to amuse, to inspire, to delight, here one day, gone one night. A verse of Michael Jackson's Gone Too Soon. Well, Victor, thank you. What a great, poignant letter that is. I very much appreciate that. And once again, this episode, I really had no topic. I just thought I'd read letters and see what you guys had to say. And for whatever reason, my computer it's a sketchathon here, ladies and gentlemen. A sketchathon. I'm not sure what this is. This is from Darren McKinnon. Hey Rob, you don't seem to like me saying Mr. Burnett. No, you can say You can say Mr. Burnett. You addressed my latest letter in Robservations 495, so thanks for that. In that letter, I threw completely two different film titles at you to see what you thought about them, The Iron Giant and Return of the Living Dead. I was unable to add a photo related to one of those films to my letter. I hope you're getting it this time. I paint, in oil mostly, as a hobby. Most of my paintings are a little more complex than the image I'm sending, but nonetheless, it's one of my favorites. I just felt like sharing a photo of a painting I completed, since I mentioned the film Iron Giant. Most of my paintings are just sitting around here, so being seen by no one. And after all, don't these things exist to be shared? So I'm sharing this Iron Giant painting with you. I also painted an image of Grandizer, or Goldorak as he was known in French. I grew up in Quebec and watched the show in that language. Perhaps I'll save that image for a future message. Oh, dude, I love me some Grandizer. When I feel like sharing again, there's actually a story attached to that painting. In your comments about my letter, you said it could actually be kind of fun, a random list of various imagination connoisseur-related topics you just want me to pontificate on. It's interesting you say that, and you actually went on to use the term lightning round. On my radio show that I mentioned in my letter, my co-host David and I usually write up a list of questions that we barrage our guests with in what's called our lightning round. Yes, even if it's a French-speaking show, we use the term lightning round. I'm not sure if people will steal this idea for letters or not, but I agree with you that it could be interesting. Out-of-the-blue questions are a fun way to see what people are all about. I'm already working on a few more random topics for you to pontificate on, and if I do send you some once in a while and you get tired of them, I hope you let me know. Amongst the films, books, TV shows, and music that are running through my head today, I figured I'd ask you about two horror franchises. Who do you prefer between the following? Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street? I have a favorite, and he wears a hockey mask. There's something about his silence that appeals to me. I have to tell you, I am by far more of a lover of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise than I am of the Friday the 13th franchise. Look, I went and saw all the films of all the franchises, of each franchise in the theater, and I just found the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise far more interesting. You know, I liked the first Friday the 13th, and spoiler alert, the revelation that it's Mrs. Voorhees who's killing everyone, and then, of course, when Jason comes back from the dead in the water to pull, Adrian King down underwater. It's fine, and it was a great shocker. The Carrie-like ending when the dead hand comes out of the ground. It was kind of a variation on that theme. It was fine, but the Friday the 13th movies were far more repetitive to me and far less interesting than the overt fantasy elements and the psychological underpinnings of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So I always look, the fantasy set pieces in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, while the films got progressively more elaborate, I really did enjoy them. I mean, Nightmare 3 is definitely a great sequel. Freddy's Revenge, for all of its I didn't think it was as great a film as the first Nightmare, but certainly the gay undercurrents have become something of a cause celeb in genre circles, so it's interesting to go back and revisit that film. And then the rest of the franchise, I mean, whether it's the Dream Master or the Dream Child, there's just, I think, they're just a lot more fun to watch. Watching teenagers get dispatched gets a little boring. Although I must say that I love the first Friday the 13th, and the second Friday the 13th Part 2 is disappointing because the ratings board obviously caused them to make trims to the visual effects, which are, of course, excitingly, are going to appear on the Scream Factory box set. They found a VHS tape. They had to bake the tape. There's a very interesting story, but they're able to get unseen footage, gore footage from Friday the 13th Part 2, and I'm really excited to see that. So, also, have you read the book and seen the film adaptation of A Monster Calls, book by Patrick Ness from an idea by Siobhan Dowd, and the film directed by J.A. Bayona? I have the movie, and I love the movie A Monster Calls. I have not read the book. I think the movie is tremendous. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. Oh, and in episode 495, you were addressing my letter. You mentioned the eastern part of Canada as somewhere you'd like to visit. If you do so, please let me know. I'd like for one of your meals here in New Brunswick to be on me. I'll see what I can do about you and or Elizabeth on my radio show, the French radio show I mentioned in my previous letter. Take care, Mr. Rob. Well, Darren, let me tell you, this channel is closing in. We're just shy of 1,000 subscribers from 30,000. And at 30,000 subscribers, Elizabeth will be speaking French on Elizaviews. So you could actually interview her on the radio in French. So I think that'd be really interesting. I mean, it would be, I mean, if you wanted to, you could talk to her about what it was like to be dragged onto a YouTube show. And now that she's done 71 episodes of the show, and now she has our friend, our writer, B.L. Alley, doing a parody of her YouTube show. I mean, how many people get a parody of your YouTube show? Pretty amazing. So there's that, and I think there'd be a lot to talk to her about. I want to thank you for writing in. Always good to hear from you. And thanks for the letter. Oh, you know what? You know what I didn't do? Hang on a second. I didn't, how wooed. Hang on a second. I did not show your painting. So let me, the computer's, as I said, it's a little sketchy today. So let me download this. This painting's really cool, too, by the way. This Iron Giant painting. I'm just going to call this Giant so I know where it is. So let me show this painting as I get it. There we go. And all right. Normally this would go much faster, but yeah, this is the computer is definitely it's the heat. It is not working in an optimal fashion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this painting up, assuming I can, if we're still broadcasting right now, and I'm hoping we are. Let me just, boy, it's so hot in here. No wonder the computer's poor computer. Again, I'm sorry it's taking so long to be able to do this, but it is. But it's worth it. You know what? This painting's too good not to share. So I'm going to share it. Let's see if it pops up. Here we go. Look at that. Now that is a pretty spectacular painting. Again, that comes from Darren McKinnon up in Canada. What a great piece this is. How big is this, I wonder? It's a fantastic piece. Thank you for sending it in. You are a talented bunch, you imagination connoisseurs. A talented bunch of folks. Our friend Throg, who we actually saw for the first time yesterday. Loved seeing Throg. One comes, Throg is always giving me a play on his name. Throg is too bootylicious. Throg says, my 15-year-old son Alex asked me an interesting question. He asked, who would win, Darth Vader or Hela from the Marvel Cinematic Universe? I theorized pre-Star Wars Lord Vader. Hear me out. Vader is powerful enough to take out the Emperor, F you, J.J. Abrams. Hela couldn't even take out Odin realistically till he was weak. I don't know, man. I don't know, Throg. I don't know if I'm going to grant you that. I think Hela's being her lineage being godlike. I don't think Vader could take her. I'm just saying. I would not bet against Hela in this situation. That's just me. What do you guys think? Vader or Hela? Talks amongst yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, here it comes. Willow Yang, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know Willow Yang, she is, again, one of the cornerstone members of the Post-Geek Singularity, and we do love her letters. Willow is a first-generation Chinese immigrant from China living in Canada. She's currently studying to get her PhD in microbiology, but she's also a huge geek and definitely an imagination connoisseur, and her letters are beloved around these parts. And if you go to the Burnettwork.net website, you can read her letters under the title Willow Talk. And for those of you who want to write me letters, if you want your letters to be read on the show, or send me videos, you can. And if you go to the Burnettwork.net website, if you go in the top right corner, you can find a place where you can send me both videos and letters. Please do so. This one from Willow Yang. Greetings, Rob. Every time I see Greetings, Rob, I can't help but read it in Dieter Bastian's voice. Greetings, Rob. But that's not what Willow sounds like. Forewarning. This is a bit of a sensitive subject matter. A A while back, I watched Breakfast at Tiffany's with my mom. Her first reaction to Mickey Rooney's Mr. Unioshi was, "Who's this Chubogwai, ugly freak?" She actually didn't realize that Unioshi was supposed to be Asian, or more specifically Japanese, until the scene of him wearing a kimono. I can see where some stereotypes may come from, but the caricature of East Asians having giant buck teeth has always bewildered me. My mom is used to watching Chinese cinema, and Chinese actors and movie stars look nothing like the caricatures that appear in some older American films. Although she wasn't necessarily offended by Breakfast at Tiffany's, she was confused over why they didn't hire the many Asian actors that were available for the role of Unioshi. My guess is that it was because Mickey Rooney was a much bigger box office draw than any Asian American actor in Hollywood at the time. Nevertheless, even if they had cast an actor of Japanese descent but kept the same script, it still wouldn't have worked for a modern audience. We would have just ended up with something like Long Duck Dong from 16 Candles. Caricatures aside, the practice of having white actors play Asian and other non-white characters was once considered to be perfectly acceptable. Indeed, there used to be missegregation laws that would dictate who could be cast in a movie. The 1937 adaptation of Pearl Buck's The Good Earth, a story about a family of Chinese farmers, featured an all-white main cast, with some Chinese-American actors playing more minor characters. Anna May Wong, who was one of the biggest Chinese-American stars at the time, had been suggested for the role of the female lead, but was ultimately barred from playing it because the actor cast to portray her character's husband was white, and the Hays Code at the time strictly forbid the depiction of interracial relationships, even if the characters were supposed to be the same race. Instead, she was offered the role of one of the antagonists in the story, which she turned down, stating, "You're asking me, with Chinese blood, to do the only unsympathetic role in the picture featuring an all-American cast portraying Chinese characters?" Of course, there's The Conqueror, which I've written about a review about. In short, it was a spectacularly awful movie. And John Wayne, Susan Hayward, and everyone else looked ridiculous in their roles. I don't know if the movie would have been better if it had been Marlon Brando, who was originally sought to play Genghis Khan. Brando did have his own turn at Yellowface when he portrayed an Okinawan character in the Tea House of the August Moon. Even though he apparently rigorously researched the role and spent hours a day applying makeup, the end result was still less than convincing. Perhaps people back in the day were easier to fool, but to modern audiences, he really did not look right. I personally don't want to condemn older films for their choices in casting. I don't know what the demographics in Hollywood were like back in the day, but I would assume that there just weren't that many Asian actors available to begin with. Modern movies have more difficulty justifying their casting choices. One genre that has received criticism in recent years are adaptations of anime, some prominent examples being Ghost in the Shell, Death Note, and The Last Airbender. While I hated the movie, I took no issue with the casting for Death Note. If you're going to create a remake of something and set it in a different geographical region, then you should probably have characters that reflect the demographics of that region. Asian Americans make up only about 5% of the population, so I wouldn't necessarily expect an American remake to feature many Asian characters. I understand the casting choices for Ghost in the Shell. Scarlett Johansson is arguably the biggest actress working in Hollywood right now, although my mom actually finds her to be ugly, but that's a debate for another time. However, I do think that the movie might have tried putting out fire with gasoline by revealing at the end that the Major was originally a Japanese woman. Now, I do agree with the argument that her body is that of a cyborg, and I do think that such an issue, what it would be like to lose your ethnicity when your mind is transferred to another body, would be fascinating to explore. However, I do also see the flip side of this, the fact that Scarlett Johansson is indeed portraying a character of Asian descent in the movie. It's just not good for optics. Outside of anime, I didn't mind Tilda Swinton playing the Ancient One. I haven't read the comics, so I don't know anything about the character. However, I do find it a bit troubling if the rumors of Disney avoiding having a Tibetan character in order to appease the Chinese government turn out to be true. I also didn't have issues with 21 and Argo, mostly because I never expect movies based on real stories to be accurate, whether it's in the events, locations, or appearances of the characters. I did, however, find the casting of Emma Stone as a half-native Hawaiian-Chinese character with the surname Eng in Aloha to be pretty dumb. Just on a genetic level, brown eyes are a dominant trait. I just can't believe that a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman is half Hawaiian-Chinese. I personally have never really felt the need for representation. The reason for this is probably because even though I did come to North America at a relatively young age, I still grew up watching a lot of Chinese films and television with my parents. As such, I've really never felt the need to see an Asian person on screen in Western films. However, I have to acknowledge that I don't have the same perspective as many Asian Americans who might have grown up with only Western cinema. Going back to Breakfast at Tiffany's, the 2009 DVD release of the film apparently contained a 15-minute featurette called Mr. Yunioshi, An Asian Perspective, with various Asian Americans working in the entertainment industry giving their viewpoints on the depictions of Asians in American cinema. It was quite fascinating, even for me, to hear their perspective on the matter of representation, how much pride they felt when they saw a character like Sulu in Star Trek. Asians living in places like Japan, Korea, and China grew up in Asian-majority countries watching Asian cinema that's filled with Asian characters, so their feelings about representation are very different from those of Asian Americans, who often may not have had the luxury of seeing people like themselves on screen. Finally, I don't believe in pillorying people for mistakes they've made in their past. Everyone needs to be given the opportunity to grow and learn. There are probably practices today that we consider to be perfectly acceptable that decades down the road we realize are wrong as we continue to learn, continue to progress, continue to better ourselves. As Data told Lal in The Offspring, I have asked myself that many times as I have struggled to be more human, until I realized it is the struggle itself that is most important. We must strive to be more than we are. It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards. Best regards, Willow. Again, Willow, another one of your phenomenal letters. Yeah, when it comes to representation, I understand where people are coming from. I mean, I really do. But like you, I grew up watching so much Asian cinema, whether it was kung fu and fantasy films from the 70s and 80s, and then more of the triad crime thriller John Woo-esque type films. I remember seeing Peking Opera Blues for the first time. I didn't know anything about the Peking Opera, and Sweetheart, that was the first time I'd ever seen a Sweetheart movie. And that's why I've always kind of thought when it comes to Asian cinema, I've watched so much of it, especially now when Asian cinema is so vibrant, especially the movies that are being made in Korea. That's not to put down any films that are being made in China or Japan, but Korean cinema, they've been knocking it out of the park to the point of, winning Best Picture at the Academy Awards this year. So, yeah, there's been a lot. I mean, I've watched Asian cinema a lot. But if you are Asian American or you're born in North America, seeing Asian Americans in American films, there hasn't been a lot of it. It's great when you see a director like Justin Lin, who went on to the Fast and the Furious franchise, making movies like Better Luck Tomorrow or Shopping for Fangs. And I always appreciate those kinds of films. We've had more and more of those movies dealing with the Asian American experience, which again is an experience that's different than, say, my experience. So I do appreciate, that's why we need more filmmakers covering this material. The more voices that we hear, the more experiences that can be shared amongst ourselves, I think the better off we are as people. So, I do very much appreciate hearing and seeing films from newer voices. But you're right. I mean, I can understand. You grew up watching Asian movies, so the idea that we need more representation when you actually, you have a rich cinematic history for decades of great Asian cinema to watch. This next letter comes from Santiago del Dardano Turan. Letter for Robservations, and this is what it says. Please consider my article on the woke ideology and our cultural revolution. Thanks. Uh-oh. Do I dare? Let's see. It's a book. All right, a letter to the right, it says. I don't think that I'm going to put this in the live chat. An Imagination Connoisseur has sent me this, and I'm going to, why not? So, and it's only 99 cents. You know what? I didn't, I would read this. I would actually read this on the show. I did not, it's a book, so I would imagine it's longer than I could share here, but I'm certainly putting it in the live chat, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Santiago del Dardano Turan wrote this. In this brief work, the poet, author, and Hindu apologist shares some brief reflections about the current state of affairs in 2020 with others on the political right. We are in a period of cultural revolution. To resist the advance of this authoritarian movement, it will require new ways of thinking to understand its actual intellectual foundations, inner dynamic, and how these factors are manifesting in our culture. There are no customer reviews, but there you go. That's interesting. I might have. I see what happens if I don't look at my letters up front first. But I did put that in the live chat. If people are, that sounds interesting to me. I'll probably have to come back to that and read it and see what you have to say, because I'm always fascinated by what's happening culturally and people's perspectives on it. Luke Beckett is here. Luke says, "Hi, Rob. Nice to write to you. As with many other film fans, including yourself, I'm still looking forward to the release of the next James Bond film, No Time to Die. Obviously, I'm not sure when that will be, so help me." Hey, come on, man. November, right? "I'm not sure when that will be, so help me cope. I think, look, I mean, I don't think Tenet's going to gross $1 billion, but with a $100 million opening, at least in foreign territories, not so bad. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm not sure when that will be, so to help me cope, I've been rewatching the entire series from the start. So I thought I would give you my impressions since you're a fan. When I mean from the start, I don't mean Dr. No, I mean from the 1954 climax episode, Casino Royale, which, by the way, I have on Blu-ray. What an interesting piece of television and James Bond history that is. Barry Nelson as Jimmy Bond is certainly interesting, even though he's an American and not British. But the most impressive bit of casting was Peter Lorre as Le Chiffre. How an established actor as Lorre was, known for his parts in Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon, ended up on an early television live episode of Climax is beyond me. But it certainly gives this production legitimacy. Because I like to contrast and compare different versions of movies, I followed that version of Casino Royale up with the 1967 version with Peter Sellers and David Niven, and then, of course, the 2006 version with Daniel Craig. I then went back to Dr. No and watched the movies in order, with the exception of Never Say Never Again, which I watched right after Thunderball, to again compare and contrast. As you know, Never Say Never Again is a remake of Thunderball. The 1967 version of Casino Royale is interesting in that it is a parody, and also because it was not made by Eon Productions, who, by at that time, had produced 4 serious James Bond movies. I wonder what actually, in 67, it would have been 5, because it came, You Only Live Twice came out in 67. It might have come out before that, though. I mean, the Casino Royale might have come out before You Only Live Twice, I'm not sure. I wonder what moviegoers were expecting when they went in to see this movie. Did they think it was the next James Bond movie, or did they know it was a spoof? It's like if we went into No Time to Die expecting a serious movie and got Austin Powers. What was their reaction? That's actually a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. Personally, I do enjoy that version of Casino Royale. I know it has its problems. It has 6 different directors, which makes for a very uneven movie. Peter Sellers disappears halfway, but the humor is definitely from a bygone era. But it's fun. I love the score, and any movie that has Orson Welles and Peter Sellers in the same scene is worth seeing. I just wonder what this movie would have looked like if it had been made in better hands. The Daniel Craig Casino Royale is, of course, the best of these 3, if for no other reason that it is a modern movie and was taken seriously. It's also my favorite out of the Daniel Craig era, me too, so far. I do find it interesting, however, that in this version, the card game that's featured is poker instead of Baccarat. Perhaps it was thought modern audiences would be more familiar with poker, but Baccarat is so much more James Bondish. Too bad they switched it. Again, the Bond movies have been chasing trends since the 70s, and because of the World Series of Poker and the popularity of Texas Hold'em, I think that's why they did that, so it would just appeal. More people would understand the game. Now on to the Sean Connery era. People always treat Sean Connery as the definite James Bond, although I've always liked Roger Moore better, probably because my first exposure to James Bond was Moonraker when I was 7 years old. Sean Connery is a much more serious Bond, especially in the earlier movies. I really liked Dr. No from Russia with Love and Goldfinger. Thunderball, for all of its controversy because of its production history and authorship, turns out to be pretty boring. Great visuals, but very slow and overlong. Never Say Never Again is not an improvement. You Only Live Twice was better, although I wonder what modern audiences would think of James Bond pretending to be Japanese. On Her Majesty's Secret Service gets a bad rap because of George Lazenby as James Bond, although I think people make it worse than it is. I think he was pretty good considering this was his first role. When Sean Connery comes back in Diamonds Are Forever, his passion for the part clearly has departed, so I'm not sure On Her Majesty's Secret Service would have been better with him in it. Besides, the ski chase and bobsled sequences in On Her Majesty's Secret Service are great. What really gets me about this era of James Bond is the disregard for proper casting when it comes to supporting characters. Felix Leiter is played by Jack Lord, Czech Linder, Rick Van Nutter, and Norman Burton, none of which look like each other. In fact, you don't even know who they are until Bond calls them out. Could they have rehired the same actors? If not, couldn't they have hired... I feel like I'm in Apocalypse Now right now. Like I'm Martin Sheen going up the Nung River with just water dripping from his face. If not, couldn't they have hired actors that kind of looked alike? The same goes for Ernst Stavro Blofeld. He starts out as a hand petting a cat from Russia with Love and Thunderball. When you finally see him in You Only Live Twice, he's a bald, frail guy with a huge scar under one eye, played by Donald Pleasance. Kill Bond! When you see him in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, he's now played by Telly Savalas, and who loves him, baby? I do. Still bald, but where'd the scar go? Also, how did this frail man become a championship skier? In Diamonds Are Forever, he's played by Charles Gray. Making mud pies, 007? And suddenly he has hair. How come? Come on, that was plastic surgery. Did the producers even try to connect these movies together, or did they give free range to the directors to do whatever they wanted? Did they hope people wouldn't notice? They went out of their way to make George Lazenby look exactly like Sean Connery when he took over that role. Obviously, the same courtesy was not given to the other actors. Weird. What do you think, Rob? I'm at the Roger Moore era. I will write to give you my impressions soon. Thanks for reading and stay safe. Luke Beckett. Yeah, you know, the Bond franchise in regards to its continuity is very strange. And there really is, I mean, with Blofeld and Felix Leiter, the two most obvious examples, they do bring David Hedison back as Felix Leiter in License to Kill, which is interesting. But yeah, the continuity has always been fast and loose. I mean, I have tended to always look at each Bond film as its own thing, not connected to anything else. I mean, it's an interesting way to approach a franchise, but I've just considered each Bond film sort of its own thing. I mean, yeah, there's an obvious connection right after the end of You Only Live Twice. I mean, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, when Diamonds Are Forever opens, the pre-title sequence is Bond hunting down Blofeld for presumably to take revenge on him for the death of Teresa. So that makes sense. So there's continuity there. And, of course, in For Your Eyes Only, Bond is visiting Teresa's grave. So there is nods to continuity. But the fact that M started with Pierce Brosnan and then continues on with Daniel Craig, jumping back and forth in time, however you want that to work. So, I think the best way to look at Bond films is now we're so used to continuity, internal continuity. I think each Bond movie has to take, it's better off if you look at them as individual films that aren't even at all connected. Even though they are connected, but I've never looked at them as such. I've never looked for any kind of continuity in the Bond saga at all. Although, interestingly enough, once again, the Bond franchise, not setting trends anymore, but following trends. The Daniel Craig Bond universe is a shared universe, and all the films are interconnected for better or worse. I'm still a huge James Bond fan, and I like Thunderball a little bit more than I think most people do, but your criticisms are not unfounded. So, I mean, you're right. They kind of are boring. I am not, especially when you go back and you watch the Roger Moore Bonds. Spy Who Loved Me was the first Bond film I saw in the theater, so I loved it. I mean, it was epic and widescreen, and to go from watching Bond movies on TV to then seeing, once again, after Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun that weren't even widescreen films, to see a Bond movie, and Spy Who Loved Me is a very sumptuous, big movie, and it really uses the widescreen image to great effect, and the battle on board the Leparis, the tanker with that swallows nuclear submarines. Amazing set. They built the 007 stage for that set, and it's incredible. It was incredible. So I love Roger Moore in Spy Who Loved Me, in Moonraker, in For Your Eyes Only, and even in Octopussy and Live and Let Die. I mean, A View to a Kill. And Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun I can take or leave. I'm not a big fan of those movies. They have not aged very well. And they kind of feel cheap to me. Although I do love Jeffrey Holder, and I do love Yaphet Kotto and Live and Let Die. And I like Marvin Hamill. I mean, I like George Harrison, not George Harrison, you know. Why am I drawing a blank? The producer of the Beatles who produced the soundtrack for Live and Let Die, and of course Paul McCartney doing the theme song. But why am I drawing a blank on his name? I can't believe it. I'm just getting old. But yeah, the Bond franchise, look, I like all James Bond movies. My least favorite, Man with a Golden Gun, License to Kill, A View to a Kill. Those are not favorite Bond films of mine, but even those movies I like to watch. I like the Bond franchise. I like the globe-trotting. I like the action set pieces. I usually like the music score, although License to Kill has a anemic Michael Kamen score. But, you know, there's still a lot to like in License to Kill. It's just, I don't think it's that great of a movie. But we could go on and on and on. This letter comes from Kurt A. Kurt A says, and he says this was written on May 16th, 2020. Deconstruction is lazy. Hi, Rob and imagination connoisseurs. The theory of deconstruction comes from controversial French philosopher Jacques Derrida. He's born from 1930 to he died in 2004. It is a theory that questions distinctions between primary and secondary things, such as speech and writing, mind and body, or nature and culture. But in this letter, I'm using the popular usage of the term, which means a critical dismantling of traditional thinking, primarily in regards to comics and movies. By God, I love this community of people. I love your letters. In short, when someone says it's a movie from a long-standing franchise is deconstructed, it usually means a beloved character has been drastically changed. Is deconstruction always bad? There's nothing inherently wrong with deconstruction. One could argue that Stan Lee deconstructed the traditional superhero genre by giving us flawed heroes. Spider-Man was a geeky teenager whose arrogance got his uncle killed. Iron Man was an alcoholic. The X-Men were considered subhuman freaks, etc. In Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood deconstructs the Western. The bad guy, a worthless murderer, becomes the hero, or at least an anti-hero, while the sheriff and his deputies are the villains of the story. Probably the first and best deconstruction of a superhero is Frank Miller's epic The Dark Knight Returns. I have it. I love it. The problem arises, in my view, when deconstruction becomes pervasively applied to beloved franchises. Batman, Superman, and other comic book heroes become killers. The Federation becomes a dystopian racist government. Jedi act more like followers of the dark side than the light. There's nothing wrong with those stories, but in my mind, they need to be outside of established canon, like DC's Elseworlds stories, or in Marvel Comics' case, anything outside of the main Earth 616 continuity. Yeah, I get it. Everyone is cynical, the government is evil, cops are bad, big business is out to screw you, but please don't destroy our heroes. The world needs heroes more than ever before. Just my 2 cents. Thanks for being the thermodynamic miracle that you are. Kurt A., a.k.a. Bronze Age Slacker. P.S. I'm trying to address my perfectionism, which is a huge detriment when trying to finish things. This letter, for instance, I started writing it months ago but never finished. I've decided to just send it to you as is rather than expand upon the concept, so I hope you don't mind. I don't mind at all, Kurt A., Bronze Age Slacker, because I'd be very curious. I mean, I should do a whole show on deconstruction. I mean, look, to be honest, that would require a lot of studying and a lot of great examples, and that would be something definitely to do. I'm sure there's somebody who's done a deep dive YouTube video about that. But that would be something to talk about. I mean, I would love to hear a follow-up letter to this where you get into deconstruction a lot more. To me, I find it interesting to write some character now as truly heroic, or to see the Federation as not anything but flawed. That, to me, that's what really takes creativity. Now it's just so easy to deconstruct things. Yes, let's make the Federation a bunch of racist xenophobes. Ooh, how edgy. I mean, no, that's not hard to do at all. You know what's hard to do? Write the kind of Star Trek that is uplifting, that is inspirational. What happened to aspirational Star Trek? I mean, now we get Star Trek where the characters are kind of assholes. I know, we're all going to get to love them. Mariner, woo, great. Boimler, great, awesome. But, I would much rather see characters from Star Trek. I want my Ernst Star Trek back. I think now to write earnest Star Trek is a revolutionary act. I don't even know if there's anybody that knows how to do it anymore. It requires incredibly talented writers. Maybe one day we'll have those kinds of writers back, but maybe we won't. I don't know. James Kevins is here. Greetings, Rob. I was looking for some entertainment this weekend, and I decided to give Trek 2, 3, and 4 another look, and it has been a few years. I noticed something I had missed all this time. Near the beginning of Search for Spock, as the battle-damaged Enterprise limps home to space dock, alarms start blaring, indicating an unknown creature has broken into Spock's sealed quarters. Angrily, Kirk rushes from the bridge to meet at the door. He's met at the door by 2 armored security guards with phasers drawn. No doubt both have heard the survival rate of red shirts on the ship, as both men politely step back and let the Admiral enter the cabin to face the alone. On an unrelated topic, when writing to you, I have often closed my letters to you with "your brother in fandom." Until recently, I had not realized that you actually have a brother and that his name is actually Jim. If me calling myself your brother is offensive to you in any way, I of course apologize and will do so no further. Until I hear back from you, I remain another seeker at the crossroads of eternity. Peace and long life, Jim Kevins. No, it doesn't offend me. I have, this is very interesting. It's sort of, when I think about my family, I have 2 sisters. Actually, no, I have 3 sisters and a brother. And people are probably shocked at hearing me say that, but here's what's interesting. So I was adopted. I have an adoptive sister who's 2 years younger than me. My father, before he was married to my mom, he was married before, and he had 2 children of his own, Lori and Jim, who are, they're about 20 years older than I am. And so Lori and Jim are my older brother, half brother and sister. I have my adoptive sister, Susie, that I grew up with. She was adopted when she was born, as I was. And then I found out when I was 29 years old that I had a 100% biological sister, Colleen, that found me. Which, for those of you who want to look it up, I did put, that is a whole story unto itself. I've done a few Robservations about it early on in the show. I talked about meeting my biological sister and then my biological mother. And you can actually see my biological sister, when she found me, lived in Hawaii and flew me to Hawaii. And she had a 2 local news crews come out and film our first meeting. So on the Burnettwork channel, you can, I put those videos up of the local broadcasts of me meeting my biological sister. It's a story that no one gets tired of hearing, but I will spare you it here. So you can call me your brother Jim, call me whatever you want. I've had certainly a wacky time of it in terms of family members, but you can't offend me. but thanks for asking. I appreciate you being mindful of that. Anyway, let's see what people are saying here in the chat. What are you guys saying? Let's jump over there. Let's see. Let's see. Did I say that? You know what? I don't think I said. Well, let's go back. Maybe I did. Carnell B says, regarding your thoughts on RoboCop 2, this link is a 9-minute video on a hidden mystery or hidden meaning of the movie. It implies that the movie is Kirchner's response to the direction the studio is taking the franchise. I love this show. Well, thank you, Carnell B. That sounds really interesting. I have not seen this video. Look, I am not a huge fan of RoboCop 2. I mean, I own it. I have the Blu-ray, but I'll tell you right away, I think Irvin Kershner, while he did a job, by the way, I'm putting this video in the live chat so you can find it. I think he did a fine job, but it's really missing that Verhoeven tone. And I also think Leonard Rosenman's score doesn't help. It just is all over the place, and I don't think it's great. Ethan Holgate sends in a tip and says, but I want to watch this video, and I'm glad you like the channel. Ethan Holgate sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. Alita Battle Angel was in my top 5 movies of 2019, and I'm a big James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez fan, and I thought he did a terrific job with Jim's screenplay that he wrote based on the manga. I especially love the score done by Junkie XL. I thought it was beautiful. My question is, though, with James Horner no longer with us, do you think Jim Cameron will get Junkie XL to score Avatar 2 with a beautiful score like he wrote for Alita? I think, do you think he'll do it, or do you think he'll get someone else?" Ooh, that's a good question. I'm a huge fan of Junkie XL. I mean, I love the score for Fury Road. And I think that he is very, very talented. And you might be right. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, maybe James Cameron will get Alan Silvestri to score Avatar 2. I don't know if Junkie XL is the right fit for that material. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Sorry, I must wipe off my face. I mean, the one benefit here is I feel that I'm probably going to sweat out 5 pounds of water during the show. Willow is here. Willow says, "Do you think Quark was lying when he claimed that the Ferengi never had slavery? Considering how much they hate paying employees, I find it extremely hard to believe that they wouldn't be tempted to have slaves as a means of free labor. Moreover, they already treat their women as second-class citizens with little to no rights, so I don't see why they'd feel moral aversion to keeping slaves, especially females." Ooh, that's an interesting speculative question. Well, gosh, you know, I think the idea of slavery, the idea of taking people of your own kind, first of all, I think it's one thing to think of women. I think there's a reason, there's an actual practical reason why men and in developing civilizations could have thought of women as somehow second class or lesser than men. And that is strictly biological. Because certainly when we were coming down out of the trees, the perpetuation of our species, women had to be protected while they were not only with child, but then after they had had their children, raising the children. So there was a definite, I know, I don't want to get in trouble with all of the intersectionalists or whatever, but this is whatever you want to believe in terms of gender or human sexuality or all that. There was a practical, biological reason why men and women had different roles that we evolved into, and that are obviously still a part of our civilizations, some places on this planet, even today. And ultimately, it was born out of the fact that men were not bearing children, and the women had to be protected while they did. I mean, that is a very simple explanation for what went on there. And I don't, you know, in terms of second-class citizens, I mean, you know, second-class citizens is a different. I think that when women are in their realm, when they're rearing children, you know, men definitely, I think, aren't anywhere near the position, you know, when who's in charge then? Once the men come home from hunting the mammoths or whatever it was they were doing, what position were they in when they came back home? But anyway, it's a biological thing. But to actually enslave other people as part of I don't think the Ferengi necessarily would do that. While the Ferengi obviously are motivated by profit, and they have a code. You know, they might be unscrupulous to us, but they definitely had a code. And I would wonder, I don't necessarily think it takes a unique species to decide that another part of their own species is somehow lesser than they are. And I don't mean like in terms of second class, but literally to be less, in our case, less human. We actually made a conscious decision that some people, certainly in this country, when black Africans were brought to America and enslaved, we made a decision, the people here, that they were lesser human beings. We told ourselves this, or we came up with this idea that they were lesser human beings in order to justify enslavement. The same way that the Nazis decided that Jews were, and a lot of other people, homosexuals, gypsies, whomever, were somehow lesser than they were. You know, they were not the Ubermensch. They were not whatever. So I think it requires for a species to actually have the wherewithal to dehumanize or deferengize, to decide that another group in their same species is somehow of lesser value as beings. Well, that's a big leap. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Ferengi never did that. I can't imagine that we never saw any evidence of that. And, you know, it's a pretty horrific thing that human beings were able to do that. We're human beings are great at compartmentalizing other people's lives in relation to our own, whether they're any life, animal life, you know, we're plant life. We're very quick to take other lives on our planet. It's a very I don't think it's a proud trait of our species, and I don't know if the Ferengi ever would have done that. Mark C is here. Mark C says, I was wondering if you could explain to newcomers and refresh my brain on the difference and similarities between a type Q, or I would imagine you're saying type Q and type 2 phaser. Are you saying type 1? Maybe is Q a misprint? I'm not sure. I just feel like talking geek today. Well, I actually, it's funny that you say that, because as you could probably see, right here is a type 2, well, why don't I just get it out? This is my Master Replicas William Shatner edition of a phaser. So, of course, Shatner, it's the signed autograph version of this. What I love about this is it's metal. It's all machine parts. Put this here. So, as we all know, this is a Type 2 phaser. And I don't, the batteries, I need to replace the batteries in here. But now, a Type 1 phaser is this. This is a Type 1 phaser. It has a sight on it. This sight can help you aim. And you can adjust the settings. There are multiple settings on here. Stun, disintegrate. You can heat things up with this. But obviously, this is a smaller phaser. And it doesn't pack as much of a punch. Like, you couldn't take a Horta out with this on Janus 6. The Type 1 then fits into the Type 2 phaser. And the Type 2 phaser, obviously, it augments the power. You have many different settings. You turn the settings here. It makes even... you can't really hear it. And again, the batteries are dead, but this is a really great... I love these Master Replicas phasers because they really... You feel the weight. These feel real. Like, one of the things that I've... so that's basically the difference, if that's what you're asking. Now, Discovery, I think the last vestige of Brian Fuller's involvement with Discovery, if you look at the communicators and the phasers on Discovery are very redolent of these designs from the original series, which I love. So those are basically the differences, Type 1 and Type 2 phasers. Type 2 is, it augments everything a Type 1 phaser does. So there you go. Mark C sends in a tip and says, Happy Fake Trek Day. God bless William Shatner. Yes, I believe today's the 6th, right? September 6th. So is this the day that Star Trek aired in Canada? It didn't air in North America till, of course, September 8th. That's why they're having Star Trek Day. And Mark is referring to William Shatner has certainly been going at it on social media. And so have I. It's amazing to me that modern Star Trek fans are so quick to accuse us longtime fans of being racists or misogynists or sexist. Like, it's hard for me to imagine being racist, sexist, or misogynist and also being a Star Trek fan. I mean, I guess I can see it. I do run into people like that all the time, but it always surprises me because inherently Star Trek was always to me about inclusion. But of course, Shatner was none too pleased. Paramount is CBS is kind of ripping off what DC did with Fandom. Fandom Part 2 is next weekend, but they've decided to have an impromptu Star Trek Day, and they're having live panels with about all the shows, but not the Kelvinverse. And look, I understand it's mostly to promote what's happening on Star Trek now. You've got Discovery, Picard, and of course, Lower Decks is airing now. Discovery Season 2 or 3 is going to start airing in October. So it's a marketing ploy, I understand. But when they made the poster for Star Trek Day, you have Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock looming large. You have Uhura, you have Sulu, and of course, Star Trek, the original series, is being represented by Rod Roddenberry and George Takei. Well, on the Star Trek Day poster, William Shatner's face is the smallest on that poster. And, William Shatner's still around. Leonard Nimoy isn't here. Leonard Nimoy, obviously Spock is a character on Discovery. Ethan Peck plays him. But William Shatner is the granddaddy of Star Trek. Let's face it. Captain Kirk is Star Trek. Everything else is derivative. Modern Star Trek, the original series, now everybody has a Star Trek series that is theirs, but the original series is Star Trek. Everything else is derivative. So if you're going to have a Star Trek Day and you're not focusing on... William Shatner's 89 years old. If you are... Whether William Shatner is participating in Star Trek Day or not, if you're putting William Shatner on a Star Trek poster, you damn well better show him the respect he deserves. The man is 89. How many Star Trek days does he have left? And so when you put his head on a poster that's minute, and people like George Takei... I understand he's participating in the event. I understand that the people that are making Star Trek now, what is Shatner but a white cis male? I hate to say it, but you know what? I get it. Have all the inclusion you want. But to marginalize the contribution of William Shatner, it's disrespectful. I know we now live in a country and we live in a world where disrespect for people is so common. I don't know where this came from. I can't even call my parents' friends by their first name. I was taught when I was very young, it's always Mr. and Mrs. You always say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. Even though I've known my parents' friends for sometimes, close to 50 years, I still can't call them Barbara or Steve. It's still Mr. and Mrs. Epstein. That's just the way things are. And I find it to be incredibly disrespectful. Like most of how modern Star Trek is being handled. And it certainly wasn't lost on William Shatner and Marina Sirtis for whatever reason. Deanna Troi, who was a big part, 7 seasons of Star Trek and 4 Star Trek films, she wasn't even asked. Because of what? Some kind of perceived slights that she made? What's amazing is you've got these actors that are alive, and when you're doing things like Star Trek Day, at least extend an invitation to her. She's certainly been on Picard, and I'll bet she didn't get her day rate. She was on Picard with Jonathan Frakes coming back, and no one invited her to be in part of Star Trek Day. Well, I don't know what to say about that, but Shatner was none too pleased, and I don't blame him. A slap in the face to William Shatner, who, Star Trek wouldn't be around without William Shatner's indelible performance as James Tiberius Kirk. Don't get me started. Julius is here. Julius Goodwin just sent me a tip. Well, thanks, Julius. I very much appreciate that. Thank you very much, and thank you for your continued ongoing support of the channel. Swag Props, Cal is here. Cal, thank you for your video. I loved seeing you. That was great. Swag Prop says, hi, Rob. Do you have any works of Italian maestro Milo Manara in your comics collection? My favorite is Butterscotch. I'm sure his works would appeal to the ladies of the Post-Geek Singularity like Willow and Vesna. Well, I'm a huge fan of Milo Manara. I really like European, especially erotic art by European artists. I don't have any of his individual work. That is definitely an oversight of mine. I didn't even get that very controversial Spider-Woman cover he did. But I've seen his work. I'm a big fan of Milo Manara and, a lot of the European erotic comic artists. It's weird. It's just as I've gotten older, I I don't peruse the old erotic comic art as much. It was fun. It's funny. I found my Omaha the Cat Dancer comics the other day, and I'm like, I loved Omaha the Cat Dancer, and even though they were about anthropomorphized animals, it was very, very erotic. Those things are definitely X-rated, and they're still quite something. Sean M sends in a super chat and says, so this is kind of inside baseball, but do other people watch Doomcock and other Fandom Menace channels? And did you see the Katulski, I think it's Tukolsky hoax? Yes, I keep up on all of this. Katulski is a YouTuber, and he does a number of Star Trek videos, and he detailed. He did a long con on Reddit and 4chan, I guess, where he was baiting Fandom Menace channels with fake news about Star Trek. They were just making stuff up, and apparently other Fandom Menace channels bit on it because people look at 4chan and Reddit for scoops or information. Well, here's the thing. There are people that do leak to 4chan and Reddit. There are people that work in the entertainment business. I mean, I know some people who have done so in the past for various things. So it isn't out of the realm of possibility to assume that what you're reading on Reddit and 4chan are, in fact, leaks if people are going to write leaks. I find it interesting that, look, I understand that people wanted to discredit Doomcock, but here's what I've never understood. Doomcock is a character. He's a character. He's wearing a mask. He's playing. It's like pro wrestling. The idea that, look, I understand Doomcock says, stay angry, friends. He's playing a part. Now, while I have enjoyed, I admit, I tune in to Doomcock. I don't watch every video anybody puts up, even all my favorite YouTubers. There's just too many videos to watch. But I do find Doomcock amusing, and some of what he has to say I find valid. But when people are reporting on scoops, I never listen to any. I don't listen to anyone's scoops on YouTube ever. The only time I ever believe anything is when I've either heard it from somebody that's actually working on the project in question, or I read it in Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, or reported on Deadline. Everything else I don't believe. I don't believe any of it. Because anybody who's outside of the entertainment business, and that includes 99% of all YouTubers, the information they're going to get is never going to be 100% accurate. I know there's a lot of people like Mikey Sutton, and there's other channels that report on Marvel news and scoops. But here's my feeling about scoops. The information, if people actually have accurate scoops about movies or television shows, to me, those aren't scoops because that information already exists. It's just we don't know about it because we're not part of the production. So, somebody writes a script, usually years before the movie comes out. So whatever's in that script, probably real. Now, to find out what's in that script to me isn't a scoop because the script already exists. What would be a scoop to me would be to learn what somebody's going to write before they write it. But once something is written and once it's budgeted and scheduled and they've shot a movie, just because we don't know what's there doesn't mean that other people don't. The crew certainly knows, the actors know, the studio knows. And when we find out, I mean, in my mind, I kind of wish we didn't live in a world where people were going out for scoops. I don't want to know. I do want to know. I mean, I can't help myself, but I'd rather people don't report it. Like, why not? If the movie's been made and it's coming out, why would you want to know what's happening in it? Just wait and see. Because it's such a weird, I mean, fans have always wanted to have certain knowledge. Like, I get people that constantly send me emails about, did you hear this? What do you think of the rumor of? And I'm like, what does it matter? Like, really, what does it matter? Wait and see the finished film and then comment on it. Like, why do we need to know which character might show up in this movie before we get to see the movie? But so anyway, I don't even know how I pronounce it. Katulski? I I've watched his videos. I like his videos. He's obviously very pro Star Trek. He's a passionate Star Trek fan. But, they went out and they trolled the Fandom Menace channel, specifically like Doomcock. And they did that on purpose. And my thoughts on that is, do you have better things to do? I mean, I understand. Okay, what was your point? Did you want to discredit Doomcock? Well, it's not like Doomcock is Walter Cronkite. I mean, he's playing a part. And his part is to use information, but it's like pro wrestling. I've never taken Doomcock. I always take Doomcock with a grain of salt, and I find his videos fun from that perspective. And by the way, there are people that do contact these people on YouTube or whatever. You do talk to people in the industry. People do reach out. They want things to be heard. But, just because you specifically went in to bait Doomcock, I'm thinking to myself, well, why wouldn't he take your bait? Of course he would. Why wouldn't he? I mean, again, it's not the New York Times. It's not Walter Cronkite. He's playing a part. You're going to give him information. He's going to report on it. He's going to have fun with whatever information you get. And like they always say on those channels, take what we say with a grain of salt. He says that on every one of his shows. So, it's not hard if that's what you want to do. I would question your motives. So, on one hand, you want to discredit Doomcock, and yet you'll spend a lot of time trying to do that. So what does that say about you? If you're going to report on Star Trek, you're intentionally trying to discredit somebody. Why? Are you CBS? I think that's the whole thing. It just, again, if it's not Hollywood Reporter, it's not Variety, and it's not Deadline or other places like The Wrap or outlets that you can trust. I never take anyone's scoops or rumors as truth or gospel. So I don't think anybody else should either. But I do find it interesting, like you know what? If you want to dangle low-hanging fruit in front of a person who's going to take it, knowing they're going to take it, well, that's fine. But I don't understand what you're trying to do. If you're trying to discredit Walter Cronkite or you're trying to discredit the New York Times, that's one thing. But if you're going after Doomcock and his pet Cthulhu living at the center of the earth, I mean, he's an entertainer. And if you like what he does, I do. I find him to be entertaining. Sean M. says, I thought it was wonderful. If you're reporting stuff on 4chan, think again. Yeah, I mean, okay, you could say that. And I don't mean to discredit anyone, but or to cast dispersion on anyone. But, I mean, I get it. People, look, I myself am constantly, last night, I constantly get attacked by people for my extreme views about Star Trek. But I would like to think that I don't ever sit there and go, fuck those guys. Well, I have. No, that's not true. In the past, I've said, fuck those guys. But I do get upset about the specificity of the writing or what I perceive to be ineffectual producing. And I can at least appeal or speak to those issues. But anyway, I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of information, let's call it the whisper stream. I got that term from Andrew Vaux, who wrote the Burke novels. I love the idea that there is a Hollywood whisper stream. There are people that talk. There are people that I know that I can call up. How do you think I got the Duel of the Fates script? I was the first person to report on the Duel of the Fates script. The first person. That's verifiable. I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn. I was. All I can say is there was a specific reason why I was given the Duel of the Fates script, and that was to report on it. I asked. I said, can I report on this? The person that gave it to me, and they said, without saying you should, they're like, since you are asking, yes, you can. So, I had to ask the right questions. I'm like, okay. And there is a whisper stream out there of people that do talk about these things because, after all, it's not nuclear secrets. It's not. It's the state of the union is not at stake. We're just talking about entertainment. But anyway, Brendan Sheehy says, Rob, your thoughts on Wonder Boys? I love Wonder Boys. Not man movies outside of literary, but not man movies outside of literary biographies that take deep diving into the writing process. Not many. You mean not many movies outside of literary bio? Yes. So, yes, Wonder Boys is a wonderful movie. I mean, the Bridges brothers and, of course, Michelle Pfeiffer looking her most radiant. I'm a huge fan of that film. Curtis Hanson, he made that after LA Confidential. I think it's a wonderful movie. It never gets the credit it deserves, but I really like Wonder Boys. I really do. Eric White sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. I really liked your appearance on Friday Night Tights. You definitely classed up the place. An impossible question. If you could only have 5 action figures, what would they be?" Ooh, okay. First of all, those are two different things, but let me. So as many people know, Gary Beekler, Gary Beekler, Nerdrotic. See, I got Doomcock on the brain now. Nerdrotic from his channel. Gary Beekler invited me to go on to Friday Night Tights. And Az from Heel versus Babyface was going on, and he and I have been doing these prisoner shows, and Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers was on, and a bunch of other people kind of came and went. A great bunch. Now, I had never been on Friday Night Tights before, and I was asked to go on. And as you know, I like to go over to, and those are all Fandom Menace channels. And when I'm asked, I like to go places and sort of, I mean, I don't think I'm doing some kind of evangelical outreach in terms of in fandom, but I do feel that if people, I would like to practice what I preach, and even if people are on opposite sides of the ideological spectrum that I'm on, I certainly have no problem going and speaking to them. And I really appreciate, once again, say what you want. If you don't like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, or you don't like Nerdrotic, or you don't like these other channels, I would only say to you, look at how they treat me. I am always treated with respect and dignity when I go onto those channels. And again, remember, a lot of what you do on YouTube is entertainment. A lot of the shit you talk, I mean, that's, people tune in to see that. And so people are doing those kinds of things, and that might be their brand. But I have to say that when I go on those shows, everybody's nothing but respectful to me, and I hope that I'm nothing but respectful to them. I have to set an example. I have to be the way I am. So I appreciate that you feel that way, that you like that I classed up the place. I very much appreciated the invitation, and Gary actually reached out to me the next day and said, if you ever want to come back, I would love to have you. And I thank him very much for that. I'm a big fan of Gary's, actually. So Eric also says, an impossible question. If you could only have 5 action figures, what would they be? 5 action figures, what would they be? I would have to say the QMX, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, and Khan. Since I only have 5, Sulu and Chekhov, but those would be the 5. Those 5 Star Trek figures, I would have to take those, because when I say that, the characters that have meant to me the most over the years are, of course, characters from the original series. That's what really started my fandom. And if I'm going to have 5 action figures, I guess, I mean, or I could take another tactic and say, all right, I would have to take a Kirk. And then probably a Hot Toys Batman figure, which would be tough to pick which one. And I would have to take a Superman. So Kirk, Batman, Superman, Han Solo. And again, I'd have to give you a list of 6 scale. Han Solo, the Hot Toys Vito Corleone, and I don't know what the other one would be. I'd have to think about that. Electron Star Collapse sends in a super chat. Rob, I owe you a "Don't Let the Stars Collapse on You" from the Zoom party. I had fun, and I'll try and insert myself more next time. Yeah, I tried, man. I tried to draw you out. Just want to try you out. But I thank you for being there. I hope you had a good time. I thought that was great. A lot of people have written to me and said we should do it more often. I really thought that Zoom party yesterday was a lot of fun. It was great to see you. I thought we had really good conversation going. I thought that was a lot of fun. Chuck Philpott was there. He says, I just wanted to say hi and thank you. Well, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that. Justin Tonner sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, I had a wonderful time with you and everyone on the Zoom party last night. Working on sending in some letters soon on movies I've watched lately. One will definitely be on Apocalypse Now, the final cut after I watch it. Look forward to the next Zoom party. Well, Justin, I'm glad you feel that way. Yeah, I thank you. It was a lot of fun. Mark C says, after 7 months of living with a mask, I now know why G.I. Joe always beats Cobra. That's very funny. Yeah, I'm feeling that way too. I'm kind of over it. Sean M continues on with the super chat. Thank you, by the way, for supporting the channel that way. Well, Rob, I think Katulski, I want to know how to pronounce his name. Rob, I think Katulski wanted to discredit Doomcock, who is not, as you said, Walter Cronkite. And I think Doomcock is richly deserving of being discredited. Well, now that's a whole different, I mean, yes, I can see people wanting him to take him down a peg. I can't fault somebody for feeling that way. I know. Sean M sends another super chat, follows it up and says, here's the thing, Rob. Reporting is either real or it isn't. I think Doomcock's reporting is BS. I think your reporting is real. The difference is obvious. Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. When I'm reporting something, I'm usually reporting something that has already been reported as factual. I mean, there have been times like when I reviewed the Duel of the Fate script, when I reviewed the Dune script, when I reviewed the Star Trek SETI Alpha 5 scripts. I would never do anything that I didn't already vet or verify, only because that's not my thing. I don't report spoilers or anything like that. I mean, people can say, well, Rob, you report on scripts. Well, that's true, but my feeling is those scripts were shot. You know, if I read the Dune script, I was read it and I was reporting on it because I was very enthusiastic about what I read. And it's sort of, to me, it's so silly to be like, well, but we're going to keep the Dune script very secret. Like, the book's out there. You know, the only thing that I can do is tell you how characters are being reframed or something, but it's still Dune. You know, it's like, well, I read the book. It's not like what's going to happen. So, you know, what is going to happen? By the way, it is the 6th. When do we get the Dune? Do we get the Dune? Is the Dune, it's the 8th? It drops in a day or two? I can't wait to see the full-length script, or the full-length trailer. But so, Sean, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's definitely different. Like, I don't report on the inner machinations of what's happening with Star Trek Discovery or what's going on because I don't know. You know, if somebody told me, I would report on it, but I honestly don't know. I think, honestly, I'd be the last person they would want to be. And I have to say something else. For as much as I cannot stand the state of modern Star Trek, and I make no mistake, I hate it. Star Trek Lower Decks has some enjoyable stuff in it, but again, ultimately, it's a send-up of the Star Trek franchise, and it's kind of working in its own way to work on its own, but not my thing. You know, I don't need. To me, every time you parody something, you diminish the reality of the real thing. Like, how many Simpsons parodies do people know more than the real thing? And when they go back and they watch the real thing, all they can think about is the Simpsons parody of it. Like, I hate it when people say, "Oh yeah, I've seen the Simpsons parody. I haven't seen the movie." I just feel that what Star Trek needs now is, when I'm watching great television, we have so much great TV today. I want Star Trek to be great. Star Trek should be considered the best science fiction on TV. Star Trek should have the kind of audience it had when Next Generation went off the air in season 7 in '94. Now, was season 7 the best season of Star Trek: The Next Generation? Certainly not. But I would want Star Trek to be that good. That's what I want, to see the best Star Trek ever. And I feel what we're getting is virtue signaling. We're getting compromised stories, bad science fiction, derivative stories, fashionable. Everything's fashionable. Let's make the characters. Well, you know, we can't have people that are really good at their jobs anymore because we don't want anybody to feel bad. We want our audience to recognize themselves in the characters they see on Star Trek now. Well, I never felt that way. I always wanted to see characters in Star Trek that I aspired to be, even though I knew I probably never could be. I was never going to be as smart as Spock, no matter how long I stayed in school. But I wished I could be. You know, I don't want, that's the thing about Star Trek. I want to see Star Trek great. Great. I want it to be great. I want it to be aspirational. I want it to be thought-provoking. I wish Star Trek told great science fiction stories, and it's just not. And it bums me out. Anyway, Sean M. continues on with the super chat and says, by the way, the way you're responding to it really seems like I'm putting you on the spot. No, I don't think you're putting me on the spot. I'm not. I don't hate Nerdrotic, but he is often talking pure nonsense. Well, you know, I think that I think Gary Beekler is, look, he has a lot of social commentary, political social commentary, and what's going on in his life. I mean, what happened in his life with his wife losing her business? She had a good, thriving business in San Francisco, and my girlfriend also had her own salon. And, you know, while she moved at home, I understand how a salon can do very well for you. So they had a real experience. I think Gary's commentary, one of the things that I've really been enjoying about watching his channel is I think he's giving us a snapshot of stuff that's going on in America, in addition to, you know, talking about the state of various franchises. And whether you like his approach or not, I do think that there's some valuable stuff happening on his channel, especially about what he's been going through and relocating and talking about what's been going on in San Francisco. And there's some stuff there that I think is worth listening to. But by the way, I don't think you're coming after me, and I think that you know, asking these questions is very fair. Addressing stuff that's going on in YouTube or on YouTube in space, in the imagination connoisseur space, especially when one YouTube channel that deals almost specifically only with Star Trek and going after, say, Doomcock, people that I know, I don't think that's putting me on the spot at all. I think that's very valid. That's as valid as any other entertainment news we're talking about, so I appreciate you asking. Mark C. goes on and says, trying to discredit Doomcock is like trying to discredit Svengoolie offering a rumor. Some rumors may be true, some may not. At the end of the day, it's Svengoolie with a rumor. I totally agree with you. You know, I think that Doomcock, a lot of the time, he's having fun. He's created a fun persona. And the whole thing about stay angry. By the way, he is a smart guy. Doomcock's a smart guy. And while he might have the same kind of anger about Star Trek or various other franchises as I do, I mean, when you listen to him talking outside of that Doomcock persona, he has a lot of interesting things to say. And yeah, so but like Mark C. said, Svengoolie, I love that. Svengoolie with a rumor. Yeah, you've got to look at it that way. But I do find that there is a very interesting thing that's happening, especially in Trek fandom. People that like modern Star Trek, and I see this, for me, it's not about, to me, it's about the proof is in the pudding. We live in a world, a golden age of especially genre television. You know, we've got Raised by Wolves, Ridley Scott directing TV. I watched the first 3 episodes of The Boys. Also, great television. There's so much good TV happening. You know, you've got Away, the new Hilary Swank science fiction show that For All Mankind. I think that the real disappointment in modern Star Trek is it doesn't live up to the television that we're getting across the rest of platforms. Now, there are people that are going to like modern Star Trek, that fervently love it. But what I find really interesting is they're not listening to my criticism of Star Trek. They're only hearing that I don't like it and that I'm an old man shouting about Star Trek, get off my lawn or whatever. And it's not like that at all. I want great stories that are well told, that aren't defined by political agendas or intersectional virtue signaling or whatever it is that they're doing on these shows, because their science fiction is bad. And when, you know, we've got 100 years of science fiction, bad science fiction, or at least science fiction that doesn't even have a semblance of trying to deal with real science. Like when you're dealing, why is it Star Trek predominantly for 2 seasons? We've watched Star Trek about like evil AIs. Why? Where is that coming from? I mean, why are we watching television that's a throwback to stuff that was going on 40 or 50 years ago? I mean, show me something new. You know, especially when you're dealing with, like, the Borg. You could have really stepped it up a notch, but now we don't do that. I mean, I would love to see a Star Trek show that contemplates, whether you want to call it a soul or a personality or what, there could have been a really interesting delving into, when you're somebody that has been reclaimed, if you've been assimilated, do the Borg take your soul as well? So when you come back, when they reclaim you from the collective, are you ever really able to be fully human again? I mean, they've dealt with that a little bit, but those are the kind of stories I would hope that they would delve into. There was no reason, other than they wanted to throw in the Borg. There was no reason they didn't use the Borg effectively at all, other than bring Seven of Nine back. And of course, she's no longer Seven of Nine. Now she's a social justice warrior, which is such a strange... it's such a strange thing. It's like, but anyway, I could get on. I actually go on and on, but I don't want to do that. Sean M sends in a super chat and says, in fact, Rob, I'm not coming at you at all. I agree. Star Trek Post 2009 sucks. It is. It's all derivative, and it's not new or unique or interesting, and it's bad science fiction. I think that's what I object to the most. But that's just my opinion. A lot of people like it. See, but the thing is, if you like it, like it. Like it with all your heart. Don't worry about what I have to say. Don't let my opinion dissuade you from loving something. And I know it shouldn't. But then again, then allow me to have my own opinion and think it's bad. I think for the amount of money they're spending on it, I think Star Trek has been done irreparable harm as a brand, as a franchise, and as the legacy of a half-century-old phenomenon. But, you know, what are you going to do? Fortunato says, greetings, Rob. Sounds like you need a Make Star Trek Great Again hat or merch. Stay happy, my friend. Well, you know what? I've thought about that, but then again, I also have to be mindful of, there are people that think Star Trek is great. And I hope that it leads them back somewhere. But if they want to watch this kind of show, I do think that bad storytelling is actually, I think, in the long run, detrimental. Because what it does is it serves to... The dumbing down of our modern age is something that is ongoing, and I think it's very intentional. Now, do I think the people that are making Trek, do I think that they're intentionally making bad Star Trek? No, they're trying to make the best Star Trek they can. But I'm just saying, I think most of those people are out of their depth. And if you compare it to the people that were writing Star Trek back in the 60s and what they had accomplished, I mean, they were novelists, they were playwrights, short story writers. They were real writers as opposed to people that had just written television. And ironically, then you have Michael Chabon, who comes in, who was very, very much that. He's won a Hugo Award. And that's why his contributions to Star Trek, and especially Picard, were so monumentally disappointing to me. So, what can you do? Torn Atkinson says, when you go on the Phantom Menace shows, I like to think that you will call out any BS, but I also worry that you give them legitimacy. Food for thought. Well, see, I don't think that when I go on someone's show, I don't think that necessarily should be considered some kind of approval. I'm going on someone else's show to go on someone else's show. And it's such a strange thing. Like if I hear or see something that somebody has said, or I've enjoyed something someone said, or they made a point that I agree with, I don't think that I have to go back and look into their history, their social media history, and see exactly what kind of a person they are before I retweet or talk about something that someone said that I happen to agree with. I don't have to agree with what everybody says. I think now we need to stop thinking about these things as being tribal. People don't just say all stupid shit. And people don't just say all good things. You can object. That's what debate's about. If I talk to somebody, like that would assume then that if I'm giving them legitimacy, they all have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I mean, I'm a much smaller channel, so there is a certain, I do benefit by going on their channels, and if that's what I'm looking to do. I mean, it's not, but when my idea is to engage in cogent, intelligent debate with people that share my passion for science fiction, fantasy, and horror. That's where I'm coming from. So that's what I try and do. I will say this, again, they treat me very well. I dare say that those people, and maybe it's because they want to have me on, but certainly they're not benefiting from me monetarily or as far as subscribers go. I benefit far more from being on their channels than they are benefiting from me being on their channels. So I go on there because I like to talk to people that love science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And even though we might be on opposite sides of the ideological spectrum, I think that having that, if nothing else, I can show that, hey, Rob Burnett can go talk to anybody. You know, and I think that's what this channel is all about. That's what we're here trying to do. What Imagination Connoisseurs are trying to do is we're trying to have a we're trying to have cogent discourse. We need more of it. But I appreciate what you're saying, Torn. I mean, I hope that I don't. You know, I'm always worried about discrediting myself. I mean, there are people that want to. There are people that are constantly, oh, my involvement with Axanar somehow discredited me. Even though I think I will stand by the work done on Prelude to Axanar and my work on the Vulcan scene, the two things that Axanar has actually produced, that I was a primary component of. We produced them, they were good. You know, the Vulcan scene was really a proof of concept. I said we should do something different. Let's show what we can do if we had two characters interacting on, say, the surface of Vulcan. I wanted to prove what we could do if we were going to make $1.5 million feature film. Now everyone comes after me and goes, well, you know, Rob, you know, you took all this. I didn't have any control of the money. But also, fan films were allowed to happen. When we did Axanar and raised all of our money, CBS had never come after a fan film before like that. We were the first. So, yeah. But people are always trying to discredit me with that. I'm like, look, man, the work I did for the Axanar group, I think was very legit, and I'm very proud of what we did there. And I stand behind the work I did. I'm sorry that due to gross financial mismanagement and other things that I was not able to continue that work, and also that we were sued, which was too bad. But there were shenanigans happening before we were sued because I kept having my budget cut and cut and cut. So anyway, Brandon Sheehy says, we've had a number of successful serious sci-fi films of late. Yes, Gravity, Interstellar, The Martian, Anara. Are you worried that Ad Astra might have ended that run? Not at all. We've got Dune coming out. Don't forget, there's a lot of really legitimate sci-fi being made, and being made all over the world. There's all kinds of stuff coming out. There's Russian science fiction films coming out. There's science fiction movies coming out from around the world. There's a ton of stuff coming down the pike, and I can't wait for it. So I am not worried about that at all. A lot of successful, serious science fiction films are being made. Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. I think we're in a renaissance of science fiction. We're getting the Foundation trilogy. Amazing. Or just the Foundation. Handmaid's Tale. Amazing stuff. Sean M. says Star Trek, like the USA, is already great. It is already great. It's been great since 1966. Hasn't been great of late, but it's already great. Jason Bueno says, Rob, I've been drinking with fries. Oh, man, that sounds good. Have you had Dogfish Head 120 IPA? I have not. It's so good, but I would love to have some, but I have not. I have not had some. Yeah, I haven't. It's funny, Brandon, you know, Ad Astra to me was disappointing. I'll just leave it there. I'm a James Gray fan, and Ad Astra was not, it's not what I had hoped. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Anyway, but no, I think hope springs eternal. And Star Trek is already great. I watched Star Trek. I've been watching Next Generation. We're into season 4 now. Elizabeth is watching season 4, and it's good. It is good. So, yeah. Well, everybody, gentle beings, kind souls, I am going to call it the end of Robservations episode number 506, this late night episode. I don't know if, to be honest, I don't know if we are doing a John Campea show tomorrow. We are. Never mind. I am doing a John Campea show tomorrow. I will be on the John Campea show. I will be on this show. And I will be on Whining About Movies tomorrow night with Elizabeth. We are going to be talking about Paul Newman's awesome film, The Verdict, which I truly love. So 3 shows tomorrow. That's cool. Anyway, just want to tell you that. I want to thank my Joshua Levesque is here. The Richard is here. Thanks, guys, for being here. Is anybody else here? I think it's just Josh and the Richard. Thank you. Thank you for all participating in this late night version of Robservations. Well, not late night, but 6 o'clock. I honestly was going to go on at 2, but my computer just wasn't working at all. Just wasn't working. So there was no way. Oh, Sean M. sent in another super chat, but no message. But I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank everybody I want to thank Swag Props Cal for sending in his video. I want to thank BL Alley for doing another another one of his milking the movies. And I will be playing that again tomorrow on Whining About Movies because they're very funny. And thanks for anybody who continues to write letters and sends in videos because they are great. So thank you for that. And I know tomorrow it's going to be at least 20 degrees. Well, I hope it's 20 degrees less hot than it is now. But thank you for that. And so remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night. Or have a butter knife, as B.L. Alley might say. Which I still, I admit, every time I say have a better day or have a better night, I am always about to say have a butter knife, just so you know. So thanks for that, BL. Anyway, have a good one. Stay safe.